Am I the a-hole for lying about waxing to my boyfriend? So I'm 23 female, dating my ex-BF for about 4 months ago. Recently he started asking me why I only trim my body hair and not wax or shave. I have thick roots and sensitive skin, so although I enjoy smooth skin, I prefer rash and itch-free over smooth skin. When I told him that, he started researching and started giving me ideas. Like hard wax, pre and post wax lotion, etc. Obviously I have tried all of this, and it's quite annoying that he won't stop asking me. And also I don't have as much body hair as him. So I told him I'll get waxing if does too. He backed off, but still kept asking me. I told him let's buy all of it together and get waxed together. He made lots of research and finally agreed. He bought his own products for pain-free waxing. And I told him pain-free waxing existed, it doesn't. We went to the parlor and he already started annoying the lady about how he wanna be waxed and how she should wax me. She looked at me and I told her he wants it pain-free and he's insisting that I get myself waxed at least twice a month. She understood what I meant and put hard wax all over him as per his instruction. She applied it all over his hands and armpits. She pulled the armpit one first and he started screaming, but she kept on going to his hands and he was crying and basically begging her to stop. She asked him whether he wants to continue, but he said no and asked me to get it too. I told him I suddenly don't feel like it. He went ballistic and yelled at me about how I tricked him into getting it and I'm enjoying his pain and being a huge a-hole while crying. I told him he's the a-hole for thinking it would hurt me any less and kept insisting even after I told him to stop. He went home crying and later I received a call from his parents about how much pain he's in and I'm in a hole for tricking their baby and causing him pain. I told them off, and packed his things up and went to drop them at his parents' place as he wouldn't pick up my calls. He was lying in the couch with ice packs all over him and his mom was cutting up some of the wax from his skin with scissors and he was still crying. I felt awful for telling him waxing is painless. So am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Everyone who is saying he didn't know it would hurt are ignoring that. 1. He did extensive research on the internet and is clearly equipped to understand what waxing is and that generally it hurts deeply, because it is your hairs getting pulled out, and, 2, he was perfectly okay making her get waxed and would not have let it go until she tried it. Why is women going through that pain acceptable for something she doesn't even want or benefit from, but not a guy going through that pain for something he is deeply invested in? Yeah, at first I was on the fence but nope, not the a-hole. Everyone sucks here. You for telling him that waxing is painless, although not sure how someone would think getting hair ripped out of their body would ever be painless. Him for insisting you wax, and having the audacity to want you to get waxed after it brought him to tears. Am I the a-hole for belittling my friend's grief after she named her daughter after my deceased one, and refusing to be her daughter's godmother? I have 4 children, with my youngest Luli having passed away 3 years ago at 2 years old. One of my close friends since high school, Jane, was Luli's godmother, although she wasn't heavily involved in our lives as she was a chronic traveler. Last month, Jane had her first child. They kept the gender a secret but Jane and I talked everything babies together as I'm her closest friend who has children, including names. When we talked baby names, Jane said she wasn't going to do middle names for her kids as she found them pretentious. During this time, Jane asked if I would be her kid's godmother, and I said yes. When her baby was born, her partner sent me a text, letting me know they were both healthy and the baby was a girl. The next day, Jane posted a baby reveal on Facebook and revealed the name of her baby, whose middle name was Luli. I was obviously in shock as Jane had never mentioned giving her daughter a middle name, let alone the same name as my kid. Then on Instagram, she posted the typical baby reveal photo holding her baby's hand with the caption Luli with a white heart. This was honestly too much for me so I turned off my phone. Nearly 2 weeks later, Jane reached out to my husband and asked if I was alright as she wasn't able to get in touch with me and asked me to come by and meet her daughter. I almost didn't but decided that maybe there was some explanation and agreed to come over. When Jane asked if I wanted to come over, she asked if I wanted to come over to meet Luli. We made small talk and when she put down her daughter for a nap, I brought it up and asked why her daughter's middle name is Luli. Jane told me she loved the name Luli since I'd used it, and since she was Luli's godmother, she used it as her daughter's middle name to honor my daughter. I asked why she didn't tell me she was planning on honoring my daughter, and that I was blindsided finding out via social media. She told me she had just given birth and was recovering from the experience, which I 100% understand. But when I asked if she had decided to honor my daughter before or after she'd given birth, she asked me to leave. A few days later she called and talked to me about her daughter's upcoming christening and our role as godparents. I cut her off and told her that I was sorry but I wasn't able to be her kid's godmother. She didn't take this well and claimed that she was allowed to honor my daughter as she was her godmother. I can't hog her grief, and that I can't prevent everyone from using the name Luli just because my dead daughter had the same name. So I'm here on Reddit for an outsider POV. I obviously can't claim the name Luli nor do I want to micromanage how someone else grieves. I'm definitely not looking at this from an unbiased perspective and if I'm overreacting or being irrational overing this, I want to change that. Am I the a-hole? Also, before it gets mentioned, I've been in therapy since Luli was 6, so I don't need that recommendation, I'm already on it. Not the a-hole. Holy hell, your friend is an insensitive a-hole. She should have asked before using that name. Sure, she didn't need your permission. But someone who cares about you would have certainly asked and respected your decision. Your grief takes priority over hers. For her to say you can't hog her grief is selfish and is a means of turning the tables on you. This situation reeks of using your daughter's death as a way to get attention and sympathy for herself. My heart goes out to you. I hope the rest of your support system is better than this woman. No a-holes here. Both you and your friend are emotional for different reasons. You still dealing with your grief, and her dealing with a brand new addition to her life and everything that comes with it. I think your friend was probably just thinking of doing something nice for you. Especially since you had agreed to be godmother. She made a big mistake by not talking to you about it first, but I think her heart was in the right place. Letting you find out through social was a bad move though. What she told you about hogging grief was harsh, insensitive even, but when feelings are hurt, people can lash out. If seems like that, maybe that's what happened here. Am I the a-hole for telling my friend group about another friend's kink so they would also stop being friends with him? A little backstory, this friend in reference, let's call him Paul, has been my, 26 female, roommate for a little over a year. We've been good friends since college and we've also maintained our friend group from college as well. Recently I started to notice something odd. My underwear has been frequently disappearing and reappearing in my drawer. At first I didn't notice anything, but occasionally I would notice that some pairs that were supposed to be clean had a strange smell. I started to get really suspicious after a while, especially after I brought it up to Paul and he just shrugged me off at first, but I started getting really weird vibes, and after some arguing back and forth Paul finally admitted very reluctantly to the truth. Apparently Paul has been stealing my underwear, wearing them, and putting them back in the drawer, with what I'm assuming is the hope that I end up wearing them too. When I found this out my skin crawled. I'm honestly a very open-minded person and I wouldn't have a problem with Paul wearing women's underwear if they weren't mine, and he also confessed he had been doing it for months. I felt so violated by this and told him that he would have to leave immediately. Luckily he agreed and left that night and has been crashing on a work friend's couch while he looks for a new place. He said he was really embarrassed and understood why I was no longer comfortable being friends with him. The only thing he requested was that I not tell our mutual friends. But I could not tell them, considering they were all wondering why Paul had to leave so suddenly and why we weren't friends anymore. They knew something had gone down, and when they asked I just told them because I honestly needed support about the whole thing, and I also knew there was no way I would be able to keep hanging out in the group if Paul was going to be there. Everyone was really shocked and understood my decision. Paul confronted me over text about it, telling me that I was wrong to share his kink with the whole group and that it was his private information. But I told him I was allowed to tell my friends about how his actions affected me, considering he went against my privacy and violated not only my trust but also my person. That's not a kink, it's sexual harassment and borderline abuse. There was no consent here. Not the a-hole. So I am probably going to get roasted over this opinion. I think you are not the soul to kick him out. He definitely violated your privacy and was just gross. However, I don't think you should have put his business out there to your friends. I feel you could have easily just said he crossed a line and broke my trust and I choose not to be friends with him anymore. Am I the a-hole for threatening to evict my estranged dad and his family from the house they currently live in? Some background. My parents divorced when I was 10 because dad quit his job and refused to work so he can gamble and drink all day. Our country has crappy laws about child support, so mom had to support my sister and me on her own. Growing up I tried reconnecting with my dad, but it felt like all effort to reconcile was from me. So I eventually gave up and minimized contact. I kept in touch with dad's side of the family, his siblings and my cousins. I have a good relationship with them. Fast forward to now, my sister and I are living comfortable lives. Our parents remarried. My mom married a nice man and they live overseas. 5 years ago, dad married a girl who's the same age as my younger sister. She was horrible. Whenever my sister would reach out to our dad, she'd get pissed and accuse my sister of trying to steal him. They have a son and I've been nice to him. But because our dad's wife continued her rotten streak, my sister and I decided to cut ties with them. Dad's mom died last year. A few months ago my aunt, dad's older sister, who's in charge of their parents' assets, called to tell us about our grandmother's will. Our grandfather is also dead BTW. All our grandparents' assets have been divided among grandkids and I got my grandparents' house, the house where my father and his family live. Since I live miles away from the said house and have no plans of moving there, my aunt suggested I sell it and keep the money for myself. My aunt was pretty insistent that I sell the house because she said it's what my grandmother would want. My dad neglected her during the last years of her life and put her in a home. He also apparently sold her burial lot to buy drugs. So I agreed to sell the house since it's my inheritance after all. I haven't sold the house yet, but I called my dad to tell him about it so they can start looking for a house. I wanted to give him a heads up and told him they can stay as long as I don't have a buyer yet. My dad was obviously not pleased, but he didn't argue. Meanwhile, his wife got angry and called to scream at me, saying I was being selfish and that I didn't need the house. She let slip that her parents and siblings also live there, so basically freeloading off it. She tried to make me feel guilty because now they have to rent. I ignored her. Then she went on harassing me via text and called me names. At this point, I got pissed, so I told her that if she doesn't stop harassing me, I will have them evicted ASAP even if no one is buying the house yet. My dad found out and he told me I was an a-hole to his wife. His siblings found out and they had my back. They said that his wife was never nice to them. And apparently, she's the one who persuaded my dad to remove my grandmother from her own house and put her in an elderly home so her own family can move in. Am I the a-hole? Strong, not the a-hole. Your dad's wife is a major BCH. You are already giving them more than they deserve and she proceeded to harass you. Sounds like you don't owe them anything and you should strongly consider blocking her number if it continues. Why did you call your dad in the first place? Just evict, legally, and sell the house. You might not have meant to, but you invited the drama in by not staying NC with them. Everyone sucks here, though them more than you. Am I the a-hole for wearing sweatpants in my own home and causing a scene? Tonight my fiancé's friend crashed a slow, chill night in for me and my fiancé to the great annoyance of both of us. Apparently she had some form of super important guy problems and therefore decided to just show up. Since we expected to be home alone, we were both in our stay-in clothes, which for me means sweatpants and a t-shirt. The two of them spent some time talking in the kitchen and I stayed in the living room and decided to play some video games to pass the time before the, hopefully short, visit was over. After a while my fiancée went to the bathroom and as soon as she did her friend came to me in the living room and scolded me for exposing myself to her and that I should quietly go to the bedroom and put some jeans on. My reaction to this, after a few moments of being ridiculously perplexed and offended, was to loudly say please stop looking at and making comments about my PP, which my fiancée heard and came rushing in. I told my fiancée exactly what happened and she decided to ask her friend to leave since she saw that I was very upset. All well that ends well? No. Both me and my fiancé have been absolutely bombarded by texts and phone calls from a whole bunch of people who have managed to call me every name in the book. And threatened, and I honestly do not understand why. I assume I did something wrong since there is literally a dozen women, some of my fiancé's closest friends, lighting up our phones. My fiancée herself is starting to turn and is saying I overreacted, but I still don't see it. So a verdict is more than appreciated. Not the a-hole. And it sounds like she is super hardcore lying and saying you were nude or something. You're the a-hole man. What a childish way to handle this. Am I the a-hole for turning my sister-in-law into a housewife? Throwaway account. I, 29 female, lived alone in my own apartment for a while. This was until my older brother, 33 male, and his wife moved in with me about a year ago, after my brother ran into financial troubles. I happily let them move in with me, thinking it would give them a chance to get back on their feet. This is not what ended up happening. My brother would wake up way past noon every single day, and would spend all day watching football with his feet up on the sofa. My sister-in-law would also wake up way past noon, spend about half the day getting ready and then either sitting on the sofa with her husband and browsing her phone for the whole day or going out with her friends. For the first few weeks, I wasn't too annoyed, but this went on for months. They weren't exactly paying me rent, and considering that the whole reason they're staying with me is financial trouble, I never expected money from them. But my issue was that they didn't seem to be making an effort to get back on their feet, i.e. getting jobs or looking for apartments. It seemed as though they saw my living space as a permanent solution as opposed to a temporary one. I spoke to my brother about it a couple times and tried to, as subtly as I possibly could, ask if he planned on getting a job anytime soon, and his answer was always vague and dismissive. I'm working on it, etc. This is the part of the story where I may be the a-hole, and why I'm asking this on here. Considering it had been over a year since they moved in, I began asking both of them to do some chores around the house. For example, laundry, sweeping/hoovering/mopping floors, washing dishes, etc. I wasn't trying to be malicious. I just thought they might as well help me out if they're gonna permanently live with me. My sister-in-law always seemed annoyed by this, but never told me no. My brother, on the other hand, was a different story. A few days ago he approached me, quite irritated, and asked me why I was trying to turn his wife into a housewife. He accused me of forcing both of them to clean and cook and do things just because I'm getting too lazy to do them, and said it was disrespectful to make my guests do my housework. I tried to point out, as calmly as I could, that they've been living with me for over a year now, so I no longer consider them guests. They clearly weren't planning on moving out anytime soon, so they might as well pull their weight. My brother thinks I'm an a-hole and told me that my sister-in-law feels like she can't say no to me regarding housework and that I've made my home an uncomfortable environment for her due to my behavior. It's become awkward now and I think I've made a mistake. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole, But allowing them to stay there for over a year without paying rent or getting jobs is an incredibly bizarre choice to have made. If they're going to be there, they have to pull their weight. The only reason your brother is confronting you about this is because he got used to taking advantage of your kindness, and he believes that if he makes you feel bad about being insistent that they contribute to the home in some way, that you'll stop and they can go back to being lazy. To be perfectly honest, what you need to be doing at this point is saying you guys have 2 months to both find jobs and begin the process of moving out. I find it incredibly disrespectful that you would spend a year squatting here and then have the gall to complain when I ask for something as small as doing chores to help out. You're the a-hole. To yourself for letting these leeching a-holes mooch off of you for months. They are lazy, entitled a-holes, and you need to evict them.